Welcome to everybody. This afternoon's program is going to be done by Bauman's Family Apple Butter. And what they're going to be telling us about is how cider is being made and how apple butter was being made when the Schwenkfelders brought it over with them in their migrations when they came to the New World. Harvey and Kathy Bauman they're in the third generation of their business. It started in 1892, and they offer over 20 different products. Harvey's descendant was in the Weigner and George Weigner and Maria Heebner, who came over from St. Andrew in 1734. They brought us some videos that are going to show how apple butter is made, the equipment they're doing with it, how cider is being made, and a little birdie tells me there may be some samples at the end of the program. So you'll want to stick around for those. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Harvey and Kathy Bauman.
Yes, welcome to this good time together. It's a beautiful day outside. Hopefully it was this beautiful when our ancestors came over here back in 1734. How many of you are descendants of those ancestors? Wow, quite a few Schwenkfelders here. You can thank or blame me or blame Jim Weigner back there, who's a cousin, distant third cousin, I believe, of mine, who invited me to come here, our family to come here, and tell you about apple butter and cider making. As was mentioned, I'm the third generation. My grandfather started the apple butter business, John Bauman, and then my father, Stanley, took over back in the late 20s. And then my wife, Kathy, here, and I took over or helped my mother in 1977 when my father passed on. And we helped her run the process. Kathy's originally from California. And so we got married about 9 years before, or no, 1 year before that happened. And then 9 years later, we moved up to Sassville from Schwenksville. So I've been there a lot of my life. I grew up there, I worked there, and then I went to Penn State, got an associate degree, worked at Kodak in Rochester for a year and a half, then went back to Penn State, and then went over to Nepal for 3 years to work in voluntary service on a hydroelectric project. And then came back, finished my degree at Penn State in mechanical engineering, and then started to work in the area down toward Springhouse for 30 years in engineering. But in the meantime, I would come up and work evenings and Saturdays to make sure that the equipment was running. And Kathy actually would run the business. She was running a daycare center in Hatfield. She started the daycare center there, and she ran that for 12 years, 10 years while she was still helping. She'd come mornings to the factory and afternoons down to the daycare. And she was in charge of everything there. So that's a little bit of the history there. I've also brought along my sister, who's sitting right there, my older sister, Annie Catherine, and she was named Catherine after my grandmother, who originally was a Weigner, and then got married my grandfather, John. And so I also have my son, John, here, and his wife, Caitlin. Caitlin also works now with us and helps us do bookwork, processing the records, and also helping to make sure everything runs smoothly, taking care of customers and whatever needs to be done. She's even learning how to run the forklift. So my wife's been doing that for how many years? 30 years probably. And so we have a lot of different things we have to do there to keep things running. How many of you have had apple butter? Everybody almost. Well, apple butter came along over with the Schwenkfelders on that original voyage in 1734 is what we've been told. And they celebrated right after they got off the ship a day or two later and had apple butter and other things too, I'm sure. But apple butter will keep without a lid if it's cooked hard like we do it. We still have the original recipe, we feel, that we use a lot of cider, boil it into the apples and cook it down real thick. And then it'll keep in a crock, just like you see here, these crocks. That's the way, I don't know, did anybody ever get apple butter in a crock here? No, nobody's old enough to, a few people, yeah. That's no crock. I'm sorry?
I have one.
You have one with our label on it yet? Okay. Yeah, okay, that would have been interesting to see here. Yeah, so that used to be the popular way that people took apple butter. I remember a lot of people taking when I was younger, and also wooden buckets. There were wooden buckets that a lot of people got their apple butter in. That was before the days of glass jars. And so they brought the apple butter over with them, that recipe, and we've been using that ever since. We're one of the few people, I believe, that manufacture it the same old-fashioned way. We don't have to add spice to it to flavor it, like a lot of the apple butters you get in the store are more like an apple sauce with a spice added. But we don't have to do that because we cook it down so hard. We do have apple butter with spice and sassafras if people want that. But our most popular one is without sugar. We don't add even any sugar on the one type. You just add more cider, and that makes it sweet enough and thick enough. We do have a sugar version that is a slightly more sweet, but we add sugar to that and less cider. So that's a little bit of the history and all. And let me turn it over to my wife now.
So have the, right on. Okay. Have any of you ever made apple cider? Okay, here. And we have people all the time bringing cider over to, bringing apples to our apple butter factory. And we press the apples for them and then put it in a tank and they jug it and they take it home with them. And so we have people coming all week long who are doing that. And we also have, we'll get out of order here. Okay, so yeah, so okay, so the other thing was, Harvey, can you tell us about your father and grandfather, some of the things that they have done involving minerals, etc.?
Yes, my grandfather was also very active in other things besides making cider. First, it was cider in 1892. He bought a cider press. He originally was making carriages and sleighs in the same building that we're in right now. It's a part of it, not the entire building. And then he had trouble competing with factories that were building sleighs in more mass production. So he decided to try something else, and his uncle, Weiss, loaned him some money to buy the cider press. And he also bought the sawmill in 1892. And then, so he started pressing cider and sawing logs. And in the fall, he would be pressing cider, and then the rest of the year, sawing logs. And then around 1900, he started making apple butter with using a copper coil and the steam boiler which he had already, the steam boiler, which we still, well, we don't have the original one, but we have one that was put in. It was built in 1929, and we still have that one we use side by side with our new steam generator, which then we use that steam to go through a copper coil, which goes down into a cooker, a barrel. Now we have stainless steel drum, like a drum that's on wheels. Originally, it was a molasses barrel that they used. And this was a standard way of making apple butter back around 1900. These coils were commercially available. They swing up and down and are connected to two pipes, one for inlet, one for outlet. And you put that down into the barrel and then put the apples in there, 5 bushel of apples, and start adding cider to that. And you just keep cooking the cider and boiling the water off till it gets real thick. But yeah, so my grandfather started making the apple butter, but then on the side, he was also very interested in looking for minerals and rocks, minerals out of rocks for assaying. And so he had the mineral rights for many of the farms in the area at that time. In fact, once about 25 years ago, they were starting to look for oil in our area. And I got a call from somebody. He says he saw that we had the mineral rights. Are they still in effect? And I said, no, I don't think so. And eventually I found out they weren't. Then they never found any oil either in the area, but I don't know what would have happened. Anyway, so my grandfather and my father were really into that. And actually my father got enough gold out of the minerals, out of the rock, to make a wedding ring for our mother. And they were really into looking for platinum and all kinds of rare metals, but they never were able to get enough to make a living. And so then he also got a patent. He and my father and my uncle Irvin got a patent on a quick adjustable pipe wrench, which they produced in a little factory that we have a building still behind our place. And they built this wrench, which you could adjust with it by pushing a trigger and adjusting the jaw in and out. So they got a patent on that, and they were producing them and selling them for a number of years. But it just, it didn't become economical, or they weren't making enough money. My dad said the pipe wrenches were not like apple butter. A person bought 1 or 2, and then that was it for the rest of their life. They didn't buy apple butter a pipe wrench every year like they do buy apple butter. So it wasn't profitable. So, and my dad was also he went to Ursinus College, and he graduated from Ursinus College, and he was the youngest of 9 children. And so when he graduated, they said, you have to come home and help run this business, because none of the other children were involved in it. And so he came home. He was very loyal, and he had a degree so that he could teach school, but he wasn't teaching. He was actually justice of the peace in Sassaritsville, and he did several marriages, I remember, when I was growing up. And he did a lot of income tax filing in preparation for a lot of the farmers and all the people in the area. They'd be sitting in our living room waiting to go in the office many evenings in January, February, March, and April. And so he was really into that, plus the log sawing. But the apple butter business was the main business. And then when I became in high school, he got his teaching certificate renewed and went back to substitute teaching. After the season was over, he would go out and substitute in many schools in the area. In fact, he was over here at Upper Perk a lot. And he did a real good job at that. And they really liked him. He'd get a call in the morning, sometimes come here, come there. But anyway, I don't want to get too sidetracked on this. Is supposed to be about apple butter. So are there any questions before we go on any further?
You had mentioned that apple butter will stay fresh in a crock. How long will it stay there?
Forever. As far as we know. I know I had a friend when I was going to Berks campus at Penn State. We carpooled together, and he said that they just had an auction in Boyertown. He was an editor, and he said there was a crock there that was 27 years old, and the apple butter was still good. They sold it at the auction. So it depends how it's kept. What they used to do was put like wax paper over the top, or that's what we used to do originally. I don't know if they had wax paper, but they put paper over the top and then a newspaper and then tie a string around it. And then you want to keep it at a place that's not damp. You don't put it down in the basement. A lot of people put it up in the attic. Some people put it under their bed. So, and then you pull it out, whatever, and it's thick. It was so thick. In fact, when we were growing up, we didn't put the lid on right away. If Kathy remembers this, we put them all out on tables overnight, and we had put a netting over the top. And then the next day we put the lids on, and it'll keep like honey. I mean, compared to honey, as far as keeping without refrigeration, it's so concentrated and so sweet that it keeps without a lid and without refrigeration. Now, our other products, all the other products need to be refrigerated because we don't cook them down as hard, and they have a sealed lid, and it has to be. I mean, as long as the lid is on and they're sealed, it'll keep forever. But once you take the lid off, then you need to refrigerate those other products. Okay. Any other questions?
I'll explain to you actually what apple butter is. So apple butter is combination of applesauce. You first make applesauce, and then you would add cider to it. And then, so if you would have 2 cups of applesauce and 8 cups of apple cider, you would come up with 2 cups of apple butter. And because that's dark, and the more cider you add to it, the darker it is. And when it's nice and dark, it's usually that it's concentrated enough that it will save without sealing. And so that's the basically very simple. There's one ingredient, just apples, and or you can actually add sugar to it, and we sell about half a pound of each of those. So we have a short video, and Harvey is going to narrate over here.
This is looking at the back of our factory where the apples they come in bins these days. It used to be all the apples were in bushel boxes. In fact, there's a photo back there showing my grandfather and grandmother with all these crates around the back of our the property. And
Turn off some of the lights in the front. Okay.
Turn the lights out so you see the picture better. But now the apples all come in those 20 or 18 different tin boxes, and we dump them on the conveyor. They go up into the bin. It's a lot easier than dumping them all by hand. We have forklifts. We have 2 forklifts that we use that we can move everything around with. Makes it a lot easier. In the back, you can see over there on the left, there's a wagon. It's hard to see, but that's what the apple pomace after it comes out. After the apples are squeezed, they go out on a wagon. This is the apples going up. They get spray washed on the way up, and they get ground up, and they come down. When he opens up the slide valve up there, the apples, the ground of apples come down into that cloth. And then they spread them, close the cloths, and those are plastic racks. Those used to be wood in the old days. In fact, everything was wood except for the steel rods going up and down and holding the wood together. Used to be wooden beams on the top when I took over, and now it's steel and stainless steel and plastic wherever it touches the product. Those claws act like a filter. so that the juice can flow through them, but the pulp cannot get through. So they build that up to a level. You put 20 bushel on one press. They're just about finished here, and then they're going to roll it toward us, and the press will come up from the bottom. You'll see that, and it'll squeeze the apples. You just turn on the hydraulic pump over here, this motor. It is a pump that actuates two hydraulic cylinders that are underneath. Used to be one big cylinder, and it was all powered originally by a steam engine. One steam engine, which we still have. There's a shaft that ran across, and belts that went one to the conveyor, one to the grinder, and one to the hydraulic pump. There's a piston pump in those days. So it's a lot more convenient now than it was back when they started, but still then that was much more advanced than doing it by hand like they used to do, or having a screw press. Well, there were a lot of screw presses before the hydraulic came out. So now you can see that raising up there. And that's going to soon start squeezing the juice. The juice will flow. It flows into a tank right here where the cart is sitting. That cart gets swung around to the other side. So while this is pressing, another one can be built up just like this at the same time. We have 2,500 PSI hydraulic pressure, pounds per square inch. It's about 70 tons of force when it's up to pressure, pushing on the two 6-inch cylinders on the bottom. Okay, now here you see that one was pressed, and now they're dumping the pulp out. It's going up that conveyor, out to the back to the wagon. Here's the wagon, and you see it being dumped on there. And once a day, the farmer comes over, pulls that wagon away, takes it to his farm, and the cows eat it right out of the wagon. And then I bring another one. Here you can see the cider after it's pasteurize it, and then pump it to these tanks. If people bring their own apples, it gets pumped to these tanks, and then they fill the cider themselves and take it home. Here we are in our store, showing all the different products that we have. Some of them are not ours, we just sell them. But anything with our name on there. Then we have cider slushies as well, that the people just love. They keep coming for those cider slushies. And here is Caitlin filling a jug at our tank where we pump it into when we process our own cider for drinking. And we jug it there, and then we have a lot of customers that come for it, some wholesale, and take it away. So I think that's the end of that video. We also, make apple butter. So I'm not sure, Caitlin, you want to show the apple butter one? Or do you have any questions first?
At the end.
That's at the end. Sorry, I was saying, yes.
What kind of apples do you use?
We use a variety of different apples, depending on what's available. But a lot of, in the early, it's Gala, and Red Delicious, Yellow Delicious, Fuji, Honey Crisp, and many different apples that they all come from local orchards. In Boyertown, if any of you know them, they bring us a couple truckloads a week, and we press them. We buy all the apples. We don't grow any ourselves. I should have mentioned that. We never did. We have a very small property for what we're doing here. And so it was never an orchard there. And we do a lot of custom pressing for people that bring their own apples. Originally, I think that was most of it. And still about half of our business is people bringing their own apples and taking the cider away. And yes.
Does the cider stay the same taste regardless of the apple?
Question is, does the cider have the same taste regardless of the apple? I'll ask my wife to tell you. I know the answer. She's the one that decides which apples go into the cider. She chews on them and says, well.
Yeah, he always gets upset at me because there are a bunch of apples around with like 1 or 2 bites taken out of them. Because I'm checking to see, is this kind crispy or is this kind tart or sweet? So, we try to add, sweet apples and tart apples together to make a kind of a well blended cider. And we like to have some red delicious in, we like to have some wine started if we can. And I like Fuji apples, so I try to keep putting Fuji in whenever we can. But we can't make it the same all the time because different apples are ripe. So early in the season, it's Gala and Macintosh. And then some of the others, you know, Golden Delicious and the Red Delicious and the Rome and Jonathan, you know, all start getting ripe. And so it changes, so it does change, so the flavor does change a little bit over time. But I think the main thing is that it's very fresh. And so, even though the flavor is maybe not exactly the same, it's a fresh flavor. So, and, do you remember what I'm saying here? Okay, yeah. We think Harvey mentioned that we make a number of different products, not just apple butter. And one of the kind of main thing the last couple of years, oh, there it's in here, has been salsa
Mm.
and spaghetti sauce. So during the whole month of August and most of September, basically all we're making is salsa and spaghetti sauce and ketchup. Other, a lot of things made out of tomatoes because everybody has a lot of tomatoes, the fruit growers. So we do about half Pennsylvania people, Pennsylvania growers, and about half New Jersey growers. And we have one grower from Maryland who comes once a week, gets cider pressed and brings tomatoes or other things. And so, because we're the only one in the whole area who will cook somebody's fruit. You know, there are a couple places that you can give them a recipe and they'll cook an item for you, some pepper, onions or something, I don't know. And but the important part is that we can use the fruit or vegetables of the growers that are bringing them, because it makes a good source of income for them, because other than that, they would have to throw them away or have the cattle or pigs or somebody eat them. But they come back year after year and time after time to get the salsa and spaghetti sauce and other things made. So, let's see. I have to look at a script, but he doesn't go by it, so. Do we ever use crab apples? We don't in our cider, but we do pressing for a couple of wineries and breweries and all, and some of them will bring crab apples. And they're a whole bunch of little tiny apples, and they're very, very tart. I bit into one and that one was very tart. So, and so everything that we make has only a few ingredients, like the apple butter has only one ingredient, some of the others have probably maybe 2 or 3 ingredients, and no pectin and no added anything So, so it's very, very simple recipes. So Harvey, do you have a favorite flavor and of these, and what do you like to eat it on?
Of course, apple butter is my favorite, and I like to eat it on scrapple. How many other people like to eat it on scrapple? What else do you eat it on? Bread. Bread. What was that? Sorry. Cottage cheese? Yes. Does everybody know what the word for apple butter and cottage cheese together is? Not right is the word for what? Apple butter, not butter. My dad always said that means a lot of work. Not really, that's what he said, but that's not really, that's where it comes from, Europe. And then schmearcase is the word for cottage cheese. So we all often hear schmearcase when a lot like. Those are the two things that go together really well. So, and then eat them together with apple butter. Then my second most popular or favorite would be, I think pumpkin butter. That's become very popular. We actually buy the pumpkin puree or partially processed from Kreider Farms out in near toward Lancaster, and they sell it to us in buckets, and then we cook it and add the spices and oranges and lemons to it, and it tastes like pumpkin pie. At first, when one of our new customers asked if we would make pumpkin butter, I said, "Oh, that doesn't sound good." But then when we tasted the recipe that they gave us, and they provided the pumpkins and everything, or the pumpkin sauce, and we said, "Oh, that's not too bad." So we came up with our own. Kathy had several different recipes that she processed and gave people the taste test, and so we started using the one that was most popular, and we've been processing that for the last 30 or so years. And we used to get it from Mrs. Smith's Pies. Any of you remember Mrs. Smith's over in Pottstown? That's originally how we got started, and then they went out of business, so we had to start looking, and we found this other place in toward Lancaster, and so that's where we. Well, and then one of my other favorites is blueberry. We make a blueberry butter, which is really good. A strawberry, raspberry, I like that as well. So those are my favorites.
So, if you want to know where to get our apple butter, we have our little teeny tiny store over in Sassmansville, the same, right, in the same building where we're cooking. So if you come, sometimes you'll come and you smell tomatoes, and at other times you come and you'll smell apple, and you can watch us pressing cider and cooking. And we also, if you go to any of the farm markets in southeastern Pennsylvania and parts of New Jersey, and you see something that looks like this without the label on, good chance it might have been made at our place, and then they take it home and put their own label on. And we have, you've heard of kitchen kettles out in Lancaster County. They've been our largest single customer for over 45, about 50 to 55 years, at least that. And they just get it from us in 5 pallets, and then they put their own label on it too. And and we also have a website that we do a good amount of shipping, and there's other stores around, like the some of the supermarkets, but not the big chain stores. Basically, the small stores. Okay, we have a very short video from, it was on channel 69 about many years ago, but it should still, it shows, some of the making of the apple butter, putting into jars and some other things, so it was a commercial. And so we'll show that, and then we'll see if anybody has questions.
Just click on. No. Did you play this already? We tested it.
Can we do whites again?
Apple butter, strawberry butter, pumpkin butter. The Bauman family takes your favorite fruits and cooks them into delicious spreads, like our famous apple butter, cooked with cider to make it thick and properly rich. The Bauman family has been making cider on their own press since 1892. Think of a jug of fresh cider straight from the apple. Today, visit our factory store or check our website for a local retailer near you and experience the old-fashioned goodness of Bauman family fruit butters.
Okay, we can turn the lights back on. The same one just has Christmas stuff.
All right. Everybody awake? Okay, any other questions? Yes.
Do you press all year round?
No, we don't. We press every weekday up until at the end of the year. And then we press 1 or 2 days a week from New Year's on until about April. The apples come out of storage then, and so we'll press up until then, and then that's it. Then we freeze cider, take it up to Allentown refrigerated storage in your Boyertown, and we'll freeze it there by the gallon and bring it out all summer long, so people can buy frozen cider. And then it starts up again around Labor Day is when the apples come in for pressing cider. So it's very seasonal, and yeah, that's the way we've been doing it for quite a few years now. Yes,
Do you make your own applesauce or do you buy that in bulk?
we make our own applesauce. Applesauce and apple butter comes from apples directly. We buy the apples, and Kathy will tell you how the sauce is made different from the apple butter.
Okay, I should go over by that. So, we can go talk. Okay, the applesauce that we make is just made out of apples cooked in apple cider. And so it gets its sweetness from the apple cider. And it's a little bit darker in color than what you would get in the store. And it has a little bit more flavor than what you get in the store. So we made plenty of that. Any other questions?
Yes.
So you don't add sugar to your applesauce either?
No, so we don't add any sugar to the applesauce. And it doesn't really need it because of that little bit of cider. It's not a lot of cider, but a little bit that the apples are cooked into.
Yes, back here.
Have you ever made hard cider?
No, we don't, no.
We make plenty of cider that goes somewhere else and gets made into hard cider.
I thought it would have been very displeased. So we process cider, they take it away. We won't pasteurize it if they're going to use it for vinegar or for hard cider. They have to sign a waiver. In Pennsylvania, all cider that is produced in a factory like ours must be flash pasteurized which means we heat it up to 160 degrees for 6 seconds and then cool it back down. And that takes care of killing any E. coli or very dangerous bacteria, which we've never had a problem with. And nobody in the state has had a problem with it we know of. But there was some incidents back in the 90s, mid-90s, California and up in New England. And so from that time on, they decided that we had to pasteurize it. And in Pennsylvania, you can get away without pasteurizing if you have your own orchard and your own cider press, and you sell only your cider and your property. Because that way, if there's ever a problem, they know where to go for it. But since we do so many different customers, if there'd ever be a problem, you know, it would be hard to track it back down to who might have a problem with it. Just like McDonald's is doing now with their burgers and everything else. They have E. coli problems, and so luckily we've never had a problem of any kind with any of these things, and so we're very fortunate. And yes, in the back.
Yeah, your favorite product I've always found is plum butter. Can you talk about the varieties you use in plum butter?
Okay, Catherine.
We've used a couple of different ones, but most of the time we've used the Stanley prune plums. But some of those are hard to get anymore nowadays. And so we've also used some of the damson plums. And, but actually we're making plum butter. What's today? Today's Sunday. Tomorrow we're making plum butter. It's in the freezer, plums were in the freezer. Yes.
Do you add any sugar to your salsa or spaghetti?
Okay, do we add any sugar to the salsa or spaghetti sauce? To the salsa, we don't add any sugar. I think we have one customer that wants sugar in theirs, and we add a little bit, but everybody doesn't. To the spaghetti sauce, we add a small amount of sugar to some people's, maybe about half of the growers want a little bit of sugar in, and the other half don't want any sugar in. So some of them have it and some of it doesn't.
My grandson was visiting me on Friday night, and I asked him to go with us over to your place yesterday to have carry the box of apples because we made applesauce. And I told him, he's about 37 years old. This is the day you're gonna remember with the Bauman's apple cider, the rabbit coffee, and I know that he didn't exactly want to go, but he was thrilled. And to see your place, and my only problem is I was wishing it was a working day when the smells are there and I see the coal always working and everything. But I have great respect for what you're doing and what you're continuing. And I think Bauman's apple cider must be the most famous, and forget about smokers and all those other things. We have Bauman employed because I am a Bauman and so is that about, he's a Bauman. Our grandfathers were born across the street. Well, thank you for what you're doing.
You're welcome. Yeah, every once in a while, somebody comes in who says they have some Bauman heritage in their blood, so.
Actually, yesterday, 2 other people came that said they were related to you through their Bauman ancestry. So we had 3 people that we knew yesterday, and it was unusual. We don't usually have that many comments.
Yeah.
When you mentioned plum butter, it reminded me of a couple of years ago, we had some visitors from Germany who came over, and they were really enthused about our plum butter. They said they call it Lockwein over in Germany now. They still make it, and they call it Lockwein. And I said, oh, that's what we call our apple butter. We used to call our apple butter. So there's still some connection there. And plum butter is pretty popular over there, they said. Any other questions? Yes.
So you only have one press that does all your lines, like the apple cider and everything comes from one press, is that what you're saying?
Yes, we have one press, and that's for the juice. Now for cooking, we don't use the cider press at all for that. Except to add cider to the apple butter, but for the other products, we don't need to use a press, we just cook them in our cooker. And in the barrel that I mentioned, stainless steel barrel with a copper coil and steam circulating in it that cooks them.
So for the pumpkin butter, you don't press that at all yourself?
No, we don't. We have pressed some grapes for somebody the other week. It's very difficult because the conveyor doesn't like grapes.
We've had people that wanted us to press peaches, but we can't press peaches because the pits are so big. They would put holes in our cloth and it wouldn't work.
So it's strictly apples, I would say, for cider making, juice making.
Any other questions?
Yes.
One more, what do you do about all the bees?
Not bees, did you say?
You have problems with bees while you're pressing?
Well, they're there, but my dad always said, you don't bother them, they won't bother you. I got one sting this year. And I know some people are really afraid. We press cider for the Holy Valley Fair. The kids, seniors come over every year, bringing the apples that they pick up at different orchards. And we press cider for them, they sell it at the Holy Valley Fair. And those kids really, some of them are very scared of the bees. And there are a lot of yellow jackets around there. We have, traps set up, but you can't get them all. And they really become a nuisance. But like I said, I hardly ever get stung, and I haven't heard really of any complaints of anybody getting stung, but very few.
Yeah, they don't come inside very much, luckily. And we have like an air curtain at our main door to the cooking room, which blows air down, which will, so that when the bees come through, they don't want to go through that thing of air going down. And we don't have very many people get stung, but once in a while we do. Where I've got stung mostly is on the forklift. When you put your hand on the handle and there's a bee there and he doesn't like that, so. We have some things you can try, and they also have some other refreshments back there, and we have plenty of apple cider. And so I'm gonna start getting that ready. Yes.
Hey, you're
Yeah,
welcome.
I asked Kathy if she could think about any of her memories growing up. You want this one?
Being the oldest child that is from our generation, a couple of years older than Harvey, and then we have altogether, I have 3 brothers. Being as young as I was, we didn't have the engineer around that Harvey is. And when Harvey got into the business, things started becoming automatic. Automated, I was gonna say that. And it was amazing how things became a lot more efficient. And we're very thankful for all that. We know about the apple butter that was in crops. I had the story that was told to me that President Eisenhower always asked for Bauman's apple butter for their Thanksgiving dinner. And I remember storing these in our basement with the wrapped paper and all around it. And they did not spoil. Apple butter doesn't spoil unless there's something that shouldn't be in there. Whether you take a knife and then you had your knife cutting meat or something and you go in the apple butter jar, that wouldn't be good at all. We're very grateful too that Kathy married Harvey and that you have been able to work as a team, and that's really great. Now we have John Tyler's their son, and my nephew, and he's married to Caitlin. She came in from California too. But in the days way back, I was running around there and, John, I was running around there and always had fun. And people would talk Pennsylvania Dutch to me. And I never really learned it all, but a lot of the words came to me. If I answered the telephone, could have been all in Pennsylvania Dutch. So that was one thing. And then one year, my dad took me along to the Schwenkfelder church, and it was on was it when you had a special evening? Was it?
Day of remembrance.
Yes, yes. And I was very impressed and had a special feeling that night when I left. I think it was at Worcester, at that church, if that sound right? And we had a lot of good experiences. I remember regarding the peaches, we used peaches. And I and a lot of other ladies all would sit around in a circle, Harvey might remember, and we would be peeling these peaches so they could be made into peach preserve. Now, they don't make peach preserve anymore, but after we peeled the peaches, they used a French fryer where you pulled the handle out. And they went through there and they stayed in chunks. And those are just a few of my memories that I have. Thank you.
Yeah, that reminds me. We used to, like you said, use a French fry cutter to cut them into small chunks so that we could make the peach preserve. And I came up with an automatic peach dicer, we call it, using that and put a motor on it and had a lever going back and forth, put a hopper on it, and just dump the peaches in, and it would go back and forth, and out the bottom would come the diced peaches. And my dad was very impressed with that. It was before I went to engineering school. It was interesting. I always like to tinker with things. Now I'm fixing things. Yesterday I was doing plumbing work. 2H pipe plumbing that was leaking from the steam. I spent about 5 or 6 hours working on that up on the ladder. And I missed the first quarter of Penn State football. Yeah, I just thought of it. I brought all my family tree, which I developed. This is the section. Okay, this is a lot of my ancestors, not all, of course, but starting here with George Weigner and his wife, Maria Heebner, and it goes down the list. So we get down to me down here. And so I traced my ancestors back on both sides. And I'll try to put it over here, I'll put it on the piano, I guess. And then some of you might be able to see how we're related. Your ancestors.
First year that we were married, on my birthday, we spent my whole birthday in the Schwenkfelder library. I was not too happy. And he was the whole day, he was doing research and had yellow pieces of paper and he taped one on this side. When the ancestors kind of went out this way or that way. And that was like what, 48 or 9 or so years ago, like, soon after we were married.
Okay. No other questions? I think we'll start the getting the samples ready and you can enjoy
enjoy them and come over to our place.
Happy presentation. I thought it was very interesting, very beneficial, and it's great to hear about some of our ancestors and what's happening in today's time. So thank you very much.